journey to prosperity for all is one that includes and ensures that the quality of life and standard of living for all Guyanese are improved. Joining me to continue this discussion is the Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, the Honorable Susan Rodrigues. Minister Rodrigues, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Minister, let's talk briefly about the state of affairs in Guyana upon your assumption of office in 2020, particularly relating to the water sector. Tell us what that was like.
So, in assuming office in August of 2020, of course, we went in there knowing already what our plans are, the People's Progressive Party civic plans are for the housing and water sector. Those two sectors have played a major role in all of our previous administrations because we understand the value of housing and its ability to transform people's lives.
Yeah.
And similarly in the water sector, water is essential to life, and access to clean water is an important part of daily life for our people. Now, naturally, we know the states of affairs that existed during the 5-year period of the former administration. There was no vibrant housing program. Similarly, we found disarray in the water sector. The Guyana Water Inc. was a bankrupt utility company. It owed hundreds of millions of dollars to its suppliers. It owed billions of dollars in electricity bills to the Guyana Power and Light. It had several questionable arrangements, such as the procurement of Sequest water treatment, which is a chemical that was being purchased during those years to treat the water. But the arrangements were questionable, no receipts found. And so several things were wrong in GWI. And also we got feedback from our customers that were not being serviced. Thousands of leaks were reported across the country, which contributed to low level of service being received by our customers across all 10 administrative regions. So a lot of things needed to be cleaned up immediately. The staff had improved by more than double. The staff complement had increased by more than double, but we were not seeing the corresponding improvement in service delivery. And so we had to restructure the company, and we had to start immediately implementing our plans and programs in the water sector to ensure that people receive safe water and, of course, a reliable source of water.
Minister, you spoke about some key initiatives that had to be implemented upon your assumption of office. Take us through some of those projects that we've seen started in 2020 and even continuing even now in 2023.
So the good thing about our government is that, as I mentioned before, coming into government, coming into office, we had a very clear strategic direction in which we are going. And that came from our manifesto 2020. So I always consider myself very fortunate in that regard. You're not going into government blindly, now trying to set priorities. We know what the priorities were going into government. We presented a national plan for 5 years to the people of our country, upon which they elected us. And that's why here we can sit 3 years later in office and talk about our achievements and accomplishments over the last 3 years, which came from that manifesto promise that we made during our campaign in 2020. Now, very important to the water sector, of course, is access to safe and clean water. And we found that several communities across all 10 administrative regions, whether it was on the coastland or in the hinterland communities, still did not have access to water. And so from 2020 to now, we were able to provide 43,000 people with first-time access to water. Wow. This includes the hinterland and, of course, our coastland regions. So that was the first priority, ensuring that we achieve 100% access in all communities across all 10 administrative regions. Secondly, on the coastland, our priority on the coast was, first of all, drafting our strategic plan for GWI for our 5 years in government. So this strategic plan will cover from 2021 to 2025, in which we plan to increase our treated water coverage from 52% to 90% by 2025. So that's our priority on the coast, because most of our coastland areas, maybe 97% of our coast, already has access to water. So the priority on the coastland is a bit different from the hinterland, because we're dealing with the high iron content on the coast. So the priority there is ensuring that we deliver treated water coverage through the construction of water treatment plants, the upgrading of our distribution network, and also ensuring that we reduce our non-revenue water. So loss due to tampering, loss of water due to leakages and so on, which contributes to low level of service or low pressure, as we say in Guyana, and also contributes to the unreliability of water. So by ensuring that we reduce our non-revenue water, people can have a steady, consistent flow of water.
So can you tell us where we stand now in relation to getting to that 90% point within the coastal area?
So several interventions have to be made to ensure that we achieve this 90% coverage. A few steps. So first of all, we have to construct approximately about 13 large water treatment plants across the coastland to achieve that. That's one initiative. We have signed contracts last year for the construction of 7 water treatment plants that are being funded by the government of Guyana. We have a further 5 that will be funded through the Caribbean Development Bank, and that we will see go out to tender a bit later on this year for those 5 water treatment plants. And we also have another water treatment plant that we are currently looking to secure funding for, but we have done the feasibility study for the use of surface water from the Hope Canal to construct that 13th water treatment plant. That's one intervention. The second is construction of approximately 10 smaller water treatment plants across other regions, and also the upgrading and the extension of our distribution networks that are currently connected to existing water treatment plants. So there are communities that are receiving water, but that can receive treated water from existing treatment plants. So we have to upgrade our distribution networks in those areas and extend in other areas, so that those who are currently receiving water can receive treated water from those existing water treatment plants.
Important information.
So all of that will contribute to the overall 90%
by 2025
coverage. Correct.
Is. Minister Rodrigues, we are in a place now in Guyana, particularly in this part of the hemisphere, where we are facing the El Nino phenomenon. Experts have said that this can have a significant impact on the water usage that we have, and of course climate change and stuff like that. How is the Ministry of Housing and Water taking this into consideration when looking at things like water conservation to make sure that the citizenry has access to good water?
So we acknowledge that climate change is a threat to our water sources. Here in Guyana, the aquifers are our main source of water, and we appreciate the threat that the aquifers face due to climate change. In the hinterland, for example, we have a lot of communities that still have the hand-dug wells, which are shallow wells, that when during the dry season, the well dries up and there is no water for the community, and then people have to walk long distances to access water. When there is flooding, the hand-dug well becomes flooded, and of course it becomes contaminated and then unsafe for use in our hinterland communities, and that becomes a public health risk. So it's very challenging, especially for our hinterland communities, but also so on the coast as well. So we have devised several mechanisms. So one, for example, in the hinterland, our priority is the drilling of new wells. So we have drilled about 40 wells in hinterland communities from 2020 to now. And we have another 40 that we plan to drill beginning in 2023, which will ensure that we reach our hinterland target of 100% access by 2025. So these are the deep wells that we are drilling, which are encased, which have a photovoltaic system. It has a trestle, and it has the storage tanks. So should there be heavy rainfall and the system doesn't get a chance to recharge, there is a lot of storage that can sustain the community during that period. If there is a flood, the well is properly encased, so there's no risk of contamination and so on. So the community is able to receive safe water. And of course, we try as much as possible to ensure that we have individual connection to our hinterland homes, because we have a challenge in the hinterland with the layout and the landscape where people tend to live far off. Right. And then we have to take the distribution network to them, and we don't always reach every single household. But we try as much as possible to make individual connections, and where we cannot, we put standpipes as near as possible to the settlements so that people can have access to water. On the coastline, we have drafted a national water policy that is currently under review. There is a committee that is reviewing this policy, and a subcomponent of that policy is the integrated water use policy. So we understand that we have to bring all of the stakeholders together, those agencies and stakeholders who have responsibility for water use and management, that we have to come together and work in an integrated way to ensure that we protect and sustain all of our water resources. This has to be done in a sustainable manner, especially given the effects of climate change. So we are working on those policies. They're currently under review. And of course, as well, this is all part of our low carbon development strategy 2030. So our water use policy is a very high priority under the low carbon development strategy, because being a low-lying coastal region, it's extremely important that we use water in a sustainable way, and that the governance of water is given priority. Many times we don't think about how water is governed and how water is managed. And we have to ensure that there is equality in that management, and we have to ensure that safe and reliable water is delivered to all of our households.
You've mentioned several plans that the ministry has taken, or actions that the ministry has taken since assuming office under your leadership at the Ministry of Housing and Water. What would you say is the difference between the approach of this government and the previous administration in relation to water management across the country?
So access to water is a right, and we have implemented several initiatives that we even had before coming into government, before 2015, before leaving government in 2015. So we had to do a couple of quick things when we came back into government in 2020. One of it was to remove the value-added tax, the VAT, on water. Previous administration had taxed water for the first time, and that is a policy that we could never understand. You're treating it as though it's a value-added commodity. So we removed that immediately, and this is one of the ways that we have ensured access to water, because you don't want water to become unaffordable to people. So removing VAT from water was one of those things. Secondly, we restored the subsidy that we had to pensioners, and today over 28,000 pensioners are benefiting from that water subsidy that we restored. This cost the government over $500 million annually. So this puts back into the pockets of our pensioners $523 million annually. Also in 2021, I believe it was, that we reduced the water tariff by 5%, making it more affordable and putting over $200 million back into the pockets of all of our customers on an annual basis, our metered customers. So those are some of the smaller initiatives that we took immediately, but our priority, in addition to the capital spending and the capital projects, so the construction of wells, the construction of water treatment plants and so on, equally as important to that is the maintenance of our systems. And that is very, very important. That is not the glamorous part of what we do at GWI, but it's very, very important. If you look at Church Street, for example, you would have seen there's an ongoing project there to upgrade our distribution network. The network in Georgetown, the transmission and distribution water network in Georgetown, is very aged. It's over 100 years old. So even though we have the pumping capacity at Shelterbelt, at GWI, our main office there, to increase the PSI, it's impossible for us to do with the aged network that we have. The pipes will blow. So we have to start this very expensive program of upgrading our entire water distribution network. It is also very inconvenient to our people, but they have to understand why we are doing this and why it is important. I don't know if you recall, we did this in Bel Air, where a lot of the residents were inconvenienced for months because we had to take out those old asbestos pipes and we replaced the network. These are huge pipes. So the road has to be dug up and we have to replace this aged network. But this is all with a purpose and with an objective to ensuring that we deliver safe and clean water to our citizens. So while it is inconvenient, it can be messy, we have traffic congestion and so on, we are working assiduously to ensuring that by upgrading this infrastructure, that we are improving the quality of water that our citizens receive.
And so finally, as we conclude our conversation, 3 years have gone, 2 more years in this term of office. Tell the Guyanese people what they can expect in the next 2 years in relation to water distribution, safe water, treated water, and how the Ministry of Housing and Water will continue to improve their lives in the water sector in Guyana.
The next few years have to be focused heavily on implementation. The President has outlined a vision for the water sector. We have as a priority to improve 100% access, to achieve 100% access in the hinterland, and we have shown tremendous progress in that area. In 2020, access in hinterland communities was 46%. Today, as I speak to you, it has increased to 75%. By the end of 2023, after the implementation of our hinterland budgetary program for this year, it will be 89%. So we can consistently track the progress that we are making in the hinterland communities, for example, as one of our priority areas, to get to 100% access by 2025. And we are well on our way. So the next 2 years, the focus will be on implementation, ensuring that we drill the remainder of the wells and extend our distribution networks, install our photovoltaic systems, and ensuring that our communities in the hinterland have access. On the coastland, it will be ensuring, it will be implementing again the coastland water treatment program, ensuring that we start construction on the remaining water treatment plants, small and large, and continuing with the upgrade of our systems throughout the coastland regions. Reducing non-revenue water is extremely important. While we do that, installing meters are a useful thing. It's not a bad thing. Installing meters so people can track their water consumption and so that we can have reliable delivery of water to our households. Maintenance is extremely important when you're dealing with a utility company because you have to always maintain your distribution lines so that communities and households have a consistent and reliable source of water. So many things that have to be done. We have to implement our national water use policy, which will be very important in ensuring that we have the integrated water resource management plan to deliver safe water under the threat of climate change. So many priorities over the next few years, but the important thing for the public to know is that there is a clear strategic direction for water policy in Guyana and for the Guyana Water Inc. as a utility company. So now we are going through that major transformational phase, but people will see the effects of this very soon as these programs, as the construction of these water treatment plants and new wells come to a completion.
Minister Rodrigues, I want to thank you so much for affording us this opportunity to have this discussion with you.
Thank you very much.
We've heard from the Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, Minister Suzanne Rodrigues, outlining the government's plan for continued water development here in Guyana. My name is Shaquan Gill, and I'm saying goodbye for now.